And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
This is your RBLR Rays podcast. I'm your host, Zach Dobb, along with my co-host, Pat Davenport. Pat, how you doing?
I am doing good. I'm suffering from a little bit of, I think, lack of baseball-itis, I think it's called, where you start to get a little ill because you're not being able to watch the greatest sport of all time, baseball, because we are still a long way away from opening day. We're still a good couple of months or so from opening day, and I'm starting to get withdrawal symptoms, I think. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to be in 2025. We can leave 2024, particularly the Rays, 2024 back where it belongs. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Very grateful to be on to a new year. I think a better year for the Rays. We've been talking about it a little bit as we go and be going through these player reviews, but I think we've got some positive vibes on a lot of things going on this season. And this week, when we do as we're doing our player reviews, we're going to be talking about some players that not only had good 2024s, which is there's only so many of those guys, but also we think are going to have really, really good 2025. So, I'm good.
That's great. I mean, this is going to be a fun episode because we're going to be doing a lot of pitching player reviews today, which is very exciting. And the Rays pitching last year was really, really good. It was the big highlight of the team. And even before we started the 2024 season, we were getting excited about the 2025 pitching staff and rotation. We were kind of saying, even in the back end of 2023, hey, we got a lot of injuries to recover from. We got a lot of question marks coming into the rotation in 2024, but 2025 is when it's gonna pop off. And I don't think my opinion on that has changed at all. And the guys we're going to talk about is probably a big reason for why we're so optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, these are guys that are all three of the guys we're going to talk about today. Which thank you for joining us to talk about these three guys. If you're excited about 2025 and you want to be with us all throughout the season, do us a huge favor and drop us a follow on whatever social media you're following us on. Subscribe on YouTube. If you've got some thoughts on these guys we're about to talk about, drop a comment on YouTube or whatever social media platform you're following us on. Drop us a like if you enjoy the video, because we're going to get right into it. And we're going to be talking about these three. We're going to talk about three pitchers, all of which are under team control for a long time. Guys that we believe are going to be big impact players, not only this year, but going forward for the team. And, that's exciting kind of guys to talk about, because not every team in baseball has the breadth of young, talented pitching that the Rays do. So it's something to be excited about when we look and talking about this team.
Yeah, we're not having to try and do kind of copium in our brains, trying to figure out how Charlie Morton is going to be a replacement for Corbin Burns or anything like that. Just as a random example that I just plucked out of thin air. I don't know who would possibly spend $15 million on Charlie Morton to replace Corbin Burns. Who would do such a thing? I don't even know.
I don't know, but I know what the Rays would do. The Rays would have done that, spent less money on that like 3 or 4 years ago, and they would now be putting out their three amazing starting pitchers that, while they all have their, they all have one or two things that we have questions about, have a lot of talent, and we're very excited about. So we're going to stop teasing it. We're going to get right into it. We're going to start out with our player review on Ryan Pepiot. A quick kind of refresher on what happened with him this last season. Obviously, this is not a guy that we even knew was going to be on the team as we started the 2024 offseason. He was a guy that was traded to the Rays in return. He was the kind of the big piece in the return for Tyler Glasnow, traded on December 16th to the Los Angeles Dodgers. We got Ryan Pepiot and Johnny DeLuca back in exchange for Glasnow and Margot. And of course, as soon as he kind of came onto the team, we, I remember when we talked about it when the trade happened. We're looking at you, Ryan. Like, that was kind of our takeaway from the big trade was, we hope DeLuca can do some things, but Pepiot is going to be the guy that's going to define this trade for the Rays going forward. Is what can he do? And he really, I think, lived up to expectations. He's still very young. This season, he pitched 130 innings to the tune of a 3.60 ERA, 1.9 FWAR, started 26 games. All in all, really impressive to see that, that many starts and those many innings pitched. The performances in and of themselves, he had some really, really amazing performances all throughout the year. He did that, by the way, working around an injury that happened in the middle of July that he came back from. He was out about a month with an injury from the middle of July to the middle of August. August 16th, he came back and pitched through the rest of the season. So he did all of that, pitched 130 innings, pitched to a very respectable 3.6 ERA and a very, very respectable 1.9 FWAR, all while losing a month due to injury. So just that, with that recap as a framework, how did you feel about Ryan Pepiot's 2024 with the Rays?
I loved it in a sentence. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I think he showed a lot of potential, and there was loads of stuff that the Rays can continue to tweak and fine tune because he's still very, very young. Like you said, this was kind of his first full major league season, and still got things that could be tweaked and made a bit better, but so much promise. I mean, his fastball is absolutely electric. I loved how he used his fastball. It rises really well, and then he complemented that really well with nice uses of changeup and slider as well. And he picked up a lot of strikeouts. He was getting a lot of swing and miss. In fact, he had a 29.9% whiff rate on his pitches, which is an 82nd percentile. So he can really get some swing and miss, and has a unique distinction that he pitched an immaculate inning this year as well, which it shouldn't go under the radar. It's hard to do. You don't see many of those. So got an immaculate inning, and about, I think, 7 of the 9 pitches he threw were fastballs. So that's how good his fastball is. And, he had really good peripheral numbers in terms of his expected batting average, expected ERA. He managed to limit hard contact for the most part. The thing that you'd love to see out of Pepiot to take that next step forward for me is sometimes he does put himself in a little bit of trouble. He's not immune to giving up the free pass every now and then. He is capable to kind of losing an at-bat to a walk every now and then if his command tapers slightly. Like, he's not a complete wild card out there. He's not completely erratic. He's not a Joe Boyle or anything like that. But he can occasionally let things get away from him, and that's where a lot of the issues can kind of stem from with Pepiot. He is a fly ball pitcher, which means that it could be a little scary when we go to Steinbrenner. But I'm still expecting, if he can improve his command, an even better season from Pepiot next year. And I think if he didn't get injured, it looked like he was trending towards being the most valuable pitcher on the Rays this year. 0.6 FWAR away from Littell, 0.4 FWAR away from Littell. And I think he could have caught that with 5 extra starts.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. I think kind of to sum it up a little bit, nothing that he did last year is something that we would say is an overperformance for him. He was performing within his expected ratios, all of that kind of stuff. We don't expect a regression from him this year as long as he's healthy. And the injury that he suffered is not one that I'm like, it was a right knee infection, not something we expect to be coming back and causing problems for him in the future. So we expect him to be healthy. One of the things that I talk about it a lot when I talk about pitchers, he pitched the most innings he's ever pitched in a season this year, pitching 130 innings, which to me is a big deal. It's even with the injury. I mean, who knows, the injury, could it have been the Rays doing a little bit of, workload management with him and saying, have a right knee infection? I don't know. But either way, pitched a lot of innings. It pitched very well in those innings, and there are no red flags when we look at his numbers. Nothing that we're saying, hey, wait, this doesn't really add up. We're looking for some regression on him. None of that really is there. The walks are something that I think you make a good point that it is kind of the one thing where he can get himself into trouble. When you see this a lot with pitchers that have really good strikeout stuff, where if they get, sometimes they get a little too finesse and they want to try. Blake Snell used to do this all the time, where he was trying to go for the strikeout, and so he would walk guys all the time. He would he'd throw a lot of pitches in an outing and not get through a whole lot of innings and walk a lot of guys. I don't think Pepiot is quite as bad as Snell was in some of his years. His 3.32 walk per nine, about an 8% walk percentage, was a little bit high for him. It's a bit above what he's done in the past. So I do think that there's a chance that could come back down a little bit. as he was coming up through the Dodgers system, he hovered around a 10% walk percentage, and then he got that down last year with the Dodgers, or the year before last in 2023, kind of went back up, towards the 8 to 9 walk percentage. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get that down a little bit, maybe to somewhere, in a 6 to 7 walk percentage. But even the 8.9 is not the end of the world. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but we'd love to see him get it a little bit lower.
That's going to be the step between a good pitcher and him being a great pitcher, basically.
Yep, absolutely. And the stuff is all there. As I think that's what we agree on, is the stuff is absolutely all there for him. It's just going to be the question of, can he take that next step? And, obviously he's young. He's 26 years old. He's under team control until the 2029, where he's a free agent. He has an option left, which I don't think they're going to need. He's young, controllable, inexpensive, going to be highly valuable. Really the best result I think we could have expected from him this season, coming off a season where he only pitched about 50 innings due to some injuries, comes into the Rays system and, kind of balls out in what we were in a season where a lot of eyeballs were on him from Rays fans. And I would even say from MLB at large, there was frequently we saw the comparisons of Tyler Glasnow's 2024, Ryan Pepiot's 2024, not just from Rays outlets. We saw that from across the MLB. The comparisons are going to always be there for the rest of their careers. And that happens a lot when you have guys traded for one another. It happened for a little bit with Glasnow and Chris Archer. That didn't last very long because that started to get very unfair in one direction. But it'll be interesting to see, as those comparisons continue, how he continues to match up against Glasnow, who was excellent last year, but again got bit by the injury bug.
Yeah. Another interesting point on Pepiot. He started to experiment with a curveball towards the end of the year. He didn't throw very many of them, but I really liked the shape of it, and I really liked where he was throwing it as well. He only ended up throwing it 58 times throughout the year, which is not very many. But because I thought his changeup wasn't getting as good of results as maybe he hoped for, maybe he could switch that out, maybe work the curveball in a little bit more. Yeah. That's only a cursory glance, and I'm sure someone like Remy or someone who knows more about pitching would be able to break that down a little bit more. But I liked the curveball, and I wonder if we might see in spring him start to factor that in a little bit more, because that could be something that allows him to get even more off-balance swings and even more whiffs, which he doesn't need more of. But if he can get more, then he might be one of the best strikeout guys in the league.
Projecting him forward a little bit before we get to his grade, where do you think he's going to slot into the Rays rotation in 2025?
I think he could be anywhere from the best pitcher on the staff to the third or fourth. I think, assuming everyone is healthy, I think he has a shot of starting on opening day for the Rays, but I would guess that he is going to start the year as the number 2 starter.
So you think it's who do you have right now as your number 1 starter, just out of curiosity?
I don't think he's our best starter, but I think Zach Littell might get the opening day start.
That's kind of where I am too, because I think opening day starter doesn't make a huge deal, as far as it doesn't really affect anything as far as how your season's going to go from a performance standpoint. But I think it'd be nice to reward a guy who kind of came in and did a lot of work for this team and really kind of carried the team on his back from an innings perspective, to give him the opening day start, because I think guys like McClanahan and Pepiot and Boz and Bradley and some of those other guys are going to have a lot more chances to get opening day starts, as opposed to Littell, who this might be one of his only shots to get an opening day start. So I'd like to see him get that opening day start. I totally agree with you. I think it'll be really interesting to see where he ends the season. I kind of, in my opinion, I expect him to end the season as the number 2 or number 3 starter for this team. Because I think even if he doesn't necessarily make the jump from a walk perspective, even if he still comes down a little, even if it's still around the same level, when you factor in the increased innings, hopefully an injury-free 2025, I think we're going to see a really, really awesome sophomore for the Rays performance from Pepiot. And he's going to end the year considered the second or third best pitcher on this roster.
Behind McClanahan and Boz?
And that's where it gets tricky, because, If he's the third best, it'll be because Littell did much of the same from his previous season and has the kind of the innings over him, and maybe Pepiot doesn't quite get there from the performance perspective. But if Pepiot performs to his expectations, I think it's McClanahan and Pepiot right at the top there, kind of 1A, 1B.
Yeah, I think McClanahan, of course, is going to have that innings limit. You'd imagine. Right. I doubt he'd go more than 120 innings this season. I'd be surprised if he goes much further than 120. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's how you want to rank him, because I think Littell is probably the odds-on favorite to put the most innings in. He's probably going to put the most innings in of this staff, but on an inning per inning basis, I think you're right. I think McClanahan, Bars, and Pepiot are all really, really special.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see how they perform in 2025, and we will break down our expectations for them coming very soon. But for now, if you were going to give Pepiot a letter grade for last season, what would you give him?
B+. Loved it. Yeah. Wish he didn't get bit on the knee by a spider. And yet he did not become Spider-Man. So what was the point?
What was the point of that? I'm going to give him an A-, mostly because, I mean, the performance, I think, deserves an A-, but I also think he rose to the expectations, which were pretty substantial when we talk about the comparisons to Tyler Glasnow, what he did with this team, even through his injuries, what he meant to this team. Coming in and being able to have the performance that he had, being so young, I was really, really impressed with him. I'm giving him an A-.
Yeah, I can't necessarily disagree with that. This is completely off topic. Do you think Spider-Man would be, like, if you had Spider-Man powers, would you be better or worse at pitching? I'm assuming you'd be better because you generate the sticky stuff from your hands.
Well, so, I mean, he can control the stickiness on his hands. He also has super strength. So, but at the same time, like, if you're talking about if it's just Spider-Man and we all know he's Spider-Man, it's almost like not even fair. But I think the more interesting question is if Peter Parker decided to start pitching for the New York Mets or the New York Yankees, that would be really interesting because he would have to be able to control the stickiness of his hands enough that, to give him that advantage, obviously, and as well as super strength, but also make it not too inconspicuous. So we can't go through 110. So I almost wonder if he becomes like a 90, like 91, 92 mile per hour guy, but he uses the stickiness of his hands to really like throw some crazy pitches out there. I think he'd be really interesting as a pitcher, especially if we're taking it from the perspective that we can't know he's Spider-Man.
Yeah. So Ryan Pepiot, if you are Spider-Man secretly, we're expecting some big spin rates from you next year, buddy.
Really big spin rates. And, Peter Parker, looks into his wardrobe and sees the Spider-Man outfit. It's one of the coolest outfits that anyone could ever have, especially because he is actually Spider-Man. When you look in your wardrobe, you may not have a Spider-Man outfit in there, or you may. That's your business. But if you want to have an outfit that'll give you the same level of confidence that Peter Parker has when he puts on that Spider-Man outfit, go to shop.rblarsports.com, where you can get all the best merch inspired by your favorite Tampa Bay sports teams. Rowdies, Bucks, Lightning, Rays, Sun. It's all there at shop.rblarsports.com for you. Use promo code FLAPPY, FLAPPY, for 10% off your entire order there. Shop.rblarsports.com, promo code FLAPPY, FLAPPY.
Yeah, you won't need to be wearing any masks to conceal your identity. You want everyone to know that you're wearing that RBLR merchandise. And something I want to encourage as well, because we've gone onto this tangent, is that I want to know, who do you think is the best superhero, Marvel or DC? Who would be the best baseball player out of all of them, except Superman? Superman doesn't count because he's too good at everything.
And if I can add a caveat onto this hypothetically you're throwing out there, I want to add the little caveat that I added for Spider-Man, where it has to be their secret identity is playing baseball, and we'll just allow for, in this universe, that women also play baseball at a professional level. We'll just pretend that happens. Who do you think, from their power set and the way that they could use it in their alter ego, would be the best baseball player? I'm really interested to hear what the fans of RBLR Rays have to say about that.
Definitely, because they're a smart bunch. They know what they're talking about. And the best way to let us know is to go onto our YouTube page. And if you're lucky enough to catch us live on YouTube, you can leave a comment, and your comments can come up on the screen if they're good enough, and we can respond to them live on the show. And the best way to know when we're going live subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell as well. You get little notifications whenever we're going live, or if you miss it when we're live, you'll get a little notification whenever we put a new episode out, so you can stay up to date with all the Rays during the off season, and of course when we start playing in 2025.
And when we start playing in 2025, a guy that we don't know what his spot necessarily will be on the 2025 roster, because there's a lot of conversation around this guy, but somebody who had a very, very nice 2024, all things considered, is Taj Bradley. Taj Bradley had kind of had a lot of discussion around him because of his sort of up and down nature to his campaign. But at the end of it, when you look back at it, 138 innings pitched to a 4.11 ERA, a 1.5 F4. Walked guys 8% of the time, struck guys out 26.6% of the time. Very up and down season for Taj Bradley. What were your thoughts on his season?
Yeah, a very strange year from Taj Bradley, because he was pretty decent to start the season. He was like good. And then in July, he was like the greatest pitcher to ever do it. And then in August, he was the worst pitcher to ever throw a baseball. And then in September, he looked like he started to bring it back around to kind of where he normally sits. So it's hard to grade. I guess overall, it kind of graded out as a pretty good year, or at least a decent year from Taj. Because that July, he was untouchable. He was unbelievably good. Won AL Pitcher of the Month in July as well. But yeah, August, he was unwatchable. He was truly awful. And you got to wonder who's the real Taj Bradley in all of this. And that's the hardest thing to figure out, I think, of everything. He is really good at getting swing and miss and strikeouts. He's above average in that regard. And he's about average in limiting walks, I would say. He's about major league average when it comes to his walk percentage. But when people make contact off Taj Bradley, they absolutely annihilate it. I mean, his barrel percentage this year was 10.2%. So for anyone that doesn't know, a barrel percentage is not only you hit the ball hard, it's not just a hard hit ball, but you also hit it at a good launch angle, which is usually between 15 and 35 degrees. So 10.2% is outrageously high as a barrel percentage. When 10% of your contact given up is like ideal contact from both velocity and launch angle, that's not good. And also 42.9% hard hit percentage as well. Almost half of the contact against him was 95 miles an hour. That's a recipe for disaster as well. That's playing with a lot of fire. So he is a guy that will strike you out of loads, but when contact is made against him, it gets absolutely annihilated. And I think that's because he is very reliant on a fastball that is good when he's spotting it, but when he's not spotting it, it's very hittable. It doesn't move particularly different to a major league average fastball. It's not giving you a particularly unique look. And also, he has a splitter and a cutter. I don't think his cutter is particularly effective. I don't think it does enough, but he threw it a lot of the time. He throws a curveball 10% of the time that I think is actually quite good and should lean on more. But again, I think something that is really important for Taj is who's calling his games. And this was something we discussed in July when Alex Jackson was basically his personal catcher. Taj was really well in July, and when asked, he always said, Alex Jackson called a great game for me. I didn't have to think about anything. He just called the game. I threw it in my spots. Bish, bash, bosh. Easy peasy. But when Rotvet was calling his games, he was nowhere near as good, and he was nowhere near as comfortable with what was being called for him, and that led to some worse results for him. So it'll be interesting to see if he can form a better relationship with Rotvet, or if Danny Jansen can call a good game for him, because I think Taj Bradley is really, really good when used in a very particular way. But he's not the easiest to figure out how to call for him, clearly.
To put it in some perspective, from June 8th to July 25th, he started 9 games, gave up 5 earned runs. And in those games, he only gave up more than 1 earned run once. So, I mean, it was about as lights out as you can get. from July 31st to September 27th, he pitched 11 games. He did not give up he gave up 1 run or less once. He gave up 2 runs or more the other 10 times that he was out there. And I mean, 4, 5, 6, 5, 8, 4 earned runs given up. And I mean, that's about as dramatic a difference. And I think that's kind of why I said it was truly a wild difference in what he was able to do. Because when you look at the beginning of the season for him, he had 1 really bad game against Baltimore at the beginning of June. And then he had another rough game against Boston at the beginning of the season. But if you take those 2 games out, that first half of the season until the end of July, he was pretty good to great. And then he just fell off a cliff to end the season. He did have 2 nice starts to end the year. I misspoke. He did have 2 nice starts to end the year, one where he gave up no runs and the second to last start where he gave up 1 run. So he did have an okay end of the year, but I mean, just some truly abysmal starts in kind of the middle end there. And we talked about it a lot when it was happening. When he was pitching his best, the location of his fastball. And again, I don't know if this has to do with Alex Jackson or his ability to place his fastball where the Rays wanted it. But when he was placing his fastball above the strike zone, where it plays the best, just kind of right above the zone where it still threatens to be a thrown strike, a called strike, he was excellent. As soon as he wasn't able to get that fastball up there at the top of the zone, whether that was due to fatigue or due to the way the game was being called, he just fell off a cliff. So the question kind of becomes, I think, which version of Taj Bradley are we going to get going forward? And it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, it is a hard question to answer. I think there is a player there because there's so many pitches that we can point to that don't have like really exciting fastball shapes, but good velocity, that have like some decent off-speed offerings, that when they get hit, get absolutely barreled up, but they can avoid the bat long enough to make sure that doesn't matter. People that come to mind with that are Justin Verlander was really like that. Garrett Cole can be a little bit like that. So there's a ceiling there. I don't think Taj Bradley is as good as Verlander or Garrett Cole, and that's mainly a command thing. But there is a world where Taj Bradley is an above average to good starter. But what it's going to take for him to find that consistently, I'm not entirely sure. And the frustrating thing is, for all of us, I think that remains a bit of a mystery.
And I think the question, and we'll get into this more when we do our starting pitcher position preview for the 2025 season, is he going to be a starting pitcher in 2025? Or do we see him take on a little bit more of a swingman role, where maybe he's pitching 3 or 4 innings, or maybe he's coming out of the bullpen? Is there a world where they make a move like that with him? It's hard to say right now. I think it'll be really interesting to see how he's treated in spring training, how the Rays decide to use him there. It's going to be a very interesting season for Taj Bradley, one way or the other, in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, so we know McClanahan's going to be in the rotation. We know Pepiot's going to be in the rotation. Littell and Bars are going to be there. And then Bradley would be competing with Joe Boyle and Drew Rasmussen, I suppose, for starting spots. Joe Rock. And these are all, and out of all of those guys, Taj Bradley feels like the steadiest hand. Unless Rasmussen can prove he can really put those innings back together. But even then, I don't think he can maintain that over a full season. So Taj Bradley has the benefit of being the steadiest hand. He would probably be the number 5 in the rotation. And if Joe Boyle could put it together and has a really impressive spring where he's not walking every 2 guys that he faces, he could lose his job to someone like Joe Boyle. He could lose his job to someone like Rasmussen temporarily. And then his future on the team becomes uncertain. Do you think... I'm unsure how effective Bradley would be as a reliever. I guess he could be an okay middle leverage reliever, but I think the Rays have plenty of those. Do you think there's a future on the team for Bradley as a reliever?
I wonder if the future for him on the team is not necessarily as a reliever per se, but as a 3 and dive type of guy, or 4 and dive type of guy as a starter, where we say, hey, we know what your stuff is. We know what your best stuff is. Let's go 2 times through the order. or
Yeah.
something like that. And we just say, and that's what you do no matter what, wherever, at whatever point you get the second time through the order, you're done. If that's, if you get to 6 innings, that's great. But if it's more likely going to be in that, 3 to 4 to 5 inning range, and we just do that. And we set him up that way in the rotation to where we have long relief guys like a Rasmussen, like a Rock if he comes up. Like we've got a couple guys that could do that. Usain maybe that could then piggyback off of him. I think that's where he might be the most effective. Is if we're not looking at him and saying, I need 6 innings out of you today. If I look at him and I say I need 4, how would that change the way he approaches the game? And could we get some more value out of him from that perspective relative to saying, hey, I need 6 or 7 for you today?
Yeah, quite possibly. I could definitely see a world where him and Rasmussen piggyback off each other, or him and Rock piggyback off each other, get different looks. Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think his future on the team mostly depends on the development of the kind of other guys that I mentioned before on the team, because I think those other guys have higher upside than Taj, but also a lower floor.
Yeah. So before we get to one of those other guys in the team, what would you give as a letter grade for Taj for 2024?
A B, I think, a straight B. I think overall it kind of comes to a good but not great season overall. If August was not as awful as it was, he could have got a B plus, A minus. But because he was so awful in a month where we could really have done with him being good, because if we won 3 more of his starts, in August, who knows where we might have been. So it's one of those. It's a B. It was good. It wasn't great.
Yep, I'd give him a B minus only because that August was so bad. And I do I don't say it's not Taj's fault we missed the playoffs, but I do. No. It's hard to shake the fact that he played his worst baseball when we needed those wins. We needed every single win in that stretch, and he just wasn't really a part of the winning we needed to have happen. But July and the beginning of June, really June and July were great for him. It just was the end of July and August that was just terrible for him. So I hope to see a little bit more June and July, and maybe the Rays manufacture that by cutting down the number of innings he pitches and allowing him to go more full effort for a shorter period of time. I don't know, but we'll see. For now, it's a B minus for me. And speaking of B, we're going to go on to a player whose name starts with B. That's the transition of a lifetime. Shane Baz, the last of our kind of young guys who we have under control. He's also under control until 2029. Guys that have a lot of potential, have had some injury stuff happen here and there, but we think could be really, really good for us. Going through Baz's 2024, he pitched a couple less innings than some of the other guys, but that was mostly because he was coming off of injury. It took him a little bit longer to get off of, to get back to the majors than we maybe had hoped at the beginning of the year. He did not get back up into starting until closer to halfway through the season. Ended up pitching 79 innings for the Rays in 2024. Pitched to a 3.06 ERA, 1.1 F4, so got good results when he was pitching, but definitely was pitching for less time than we expected. What are your thoughts on Baz's 2024?
I loved what I saw from Baz in 2024. Obviously, it's a shame that he couldn't pitch a few more innings, but from what we saw, it's always worrying when a guy has essentially 2 seasons on the shelf recovering from injury. You never know what they're going to, especially a kind of stuff first guy like Baz. You wonder what his stuff is going to look like when he comes back. Can he still command stuff? What's he going to look like when he gets hurt so badly, kind of so early in his career, just when he was reaching the major leagues as well? And oh my goodness, he looked really, really good. He was getting loads of weak contact. I loved how his pitches looked, and it all translated into good results. What was interesting, I guess, was when you look at Baz's stuff, you expect him to be more of a strikeout guy, but he's kind of not. He's more of a weak contact guy, or at least that's how the results played out this year. His strikeout percentage was below major league average, but he was really effective at doing that. And you know what? His command was a little below major league average, but he was still kind of coming back from injury, but I think he set himself up super well for 2025. And I think all of us were kind of, when Bars came back, we were like, it's great that he's back and pitching now, but we just can't wait to see what he looks like with a full year, full spring training, a full 2025 to go at it with a man of his potential. He's only 25 still. It feels like we've had this guy in our system for, well, we picked him up at the 2018 deadline, which was, 2018 was 7 years ago. So he's been in the system over 6 years, but he's still only 25. And like you said, we still got so much control of him, and the potential is through the roof with this guy. And he's definitely earned a spot in the rotation for next year for me.
Yeah, and one of the things that I liked a lot about his 2024 was when you look back at his game logs, 14 games started, he only gave up 4 runs or more. He gave up 4 runs one time. Every other start was 3 runs or less that he gave up. A lot of 2s in there, a couple 1s in there, 3 3-run performances in there. But what that says to me is every time that Shane Baz started, except for once, I would say the Rays had a full chance to win that game. That he was not putting the game out of reach. He was not losing games. Because in my opinion, an offense should be able to score 3 or more runs in a game, just in my opinion. So as long as your starter is not allowing more than 4 runs in a start, he is putting you in a position where you could win the game. You'd love for him to get closer to that 2 runs, and he did that a lot in 2024. He only actually gave up 3 runs 3 times. So when you count the 3s and 4s, the kind of where you would maybe put him on the border of putting the Rays with a chance to win the game. Of his 14 starts, he only did that 4 times. So 10 of his 14 starts, the Rays were in very reasonable position to win that baseball game. And that is something that is really, really important for this team, where offense has not been, the offense has been at a premium sometimes for this team. So having pitchers like Baz that can go out there and give you a chance, just give you a chance to win. And you're right that the strikeout numbers aren't quite where they had been in the past. It'll be interesting to see if they ever quite get back up to where they were, or if he kind of slots into more of a soft contact guy going forward. It'll be interesting to see. It's kind of hard to. I kind of am taking a lot of the peripheral numbers for Baz with a grain of salt, because it's a small sample size and coming off of injury. So there are some things that look really good, like his home runs per fastball went down. His home runs per 9 went down in 2024 relative to previous seasons. Walks were right about the same. The strikeouts were way down, but I mean, he was giving up less runs via the home run, which is an easy way to just get yourself out of shape. So it's really interesting. It'll be really interesting to see which of those numbers stick going into 2025 and which don't. But I think, considering coming off of injury and being injured for so long, what he was able to do in 2024 was really valuable for this team. He kept the Rays in almost every single game he pitched, which is something we sorely needed in a point in the season where we were just fighting for wins.
Yeah, and to add to that point where you said he only gave up 3 runs or more 4 times, he didn't do that at all in his final 8 starts of the year.
Yeah.
They were all early. Like his first 2 starts, he gave up 3 runs, and then he had a 4-run outing and a 3-run outing in August. And then late August all the way through September, it was all 1s, 2s, and 0s. So he was putting it together and getting better with every outing as well, which is what's maybe most exciting. I think the highlight was on the 20th of August. He went 7 2/3 scoreless against Oakland. So that's what he can do. But weird that he maxed out at 7 strikeouts. That was the most he had in the game. That's not. I don't know if that's something that's going to stick for him. But either way, I have gone on record on Twitter saying that I think Baz has potential to be the big breakout guy of 2025. I think he might be. I'm going to go. I'm going to say I think he's going to lead the team in pitching WAR next year.
You said you made an interesting point about strikeouts in a game. I got a question for you. How many times in Baz's MLB career do you think he has exceeded 7 strikeouts in a game?
Oh, maybe twice.
Once in 2021, he exceeded it one time. He threw 9 strikeouts in a game in 2021. That's it. Every other game has been right around. And it's funny when you look at his game logs, he kind of ends up right around 5 to 7 strikeouts almost every single game. He had 2 games where he threw 2 strikeouts, another game where he threw 1, 2 games where he threw 4. All the rest of his games were right in that 5, 6, 7 range of strikeouts. So he's kind of remarkably consistent where he's going to strike out about 5 to 6 guys a game. He's giving up maybe 1 to 3 runs a game. And he's walking. He had 4 games where he walked 3 guys or more. All the rest were below that. So 1 or 2 guys a game. So there's a lot of things to like about, what Boz did in 2024. I think it's just that we kind of expected him based on the stuff that we've seen. We expected 10, 11 strikeout games where he's going, 6, 7 innings. He's not really done that, but he has still been very productive for the team. So it may not look like what we kind of dreamed and envisioned it might look like based on the stuff we saw in the minors and even the stuff we've seen in the majors. But the results are it's hard to argue with the results.
Absolutely. And, the Rays tend to put a good defense behind a pitcher. So if you're just giving up soft contact, that plays into the Rays' hands perfectly as well. It doesn't really matter how you get the outs. Of course, strikeouts are the safest way to get outs because a ball in play is always a chance for something to go wrong. But he's proven that he can get it done just by doing the soft contact thing. So however he does it, I just have a lot of belief in Shane Baz. I'm going to stick to my prediction that he's going to lead the team in pitching war next year.
I'll be very excited if he does. I think if Boz is leading the team in pitching war, that hopefully means either something very wrong has happened for the rest of the team or something very right has happened for Boz. I'm going to hope for something very right. Looking back at 2024 for Boz, what would you give him as a letter grade?
A B again, maybe a B plus. Loved what I saw once he came up, but didn't pitch enough to get into the top band. If we were gonna I know Ben likes to really lean into the teacher analogy. He's written the first 2/3 of the essay and it's brilliant, but he forgot to write a conclusion, so I can't give him an A.
Yeah, I think it's he's on the border. Ben gave a couple when we did the peer reviews last week. He gave a couple of guys unable to submit because of injury. And I think that Boz is kind of on the border there, but I'm going to give him a B. I'm actually going to give him a B plus because despite the injury, he was really, really, really good. Not really, really good. He got good results when he was on the field and good results in a period. You made a good point about he was doing his best work at the end of the season when we needed him most. He was doing good work. So for that, in the same way that I'm going to ding Taj a little bit for underperforming in parts of the season where we needed him, I'm going to give Boz a little bit of a benefit where he performed well in the part of the season where we really needed him. So it's going to be a B plus for me. Very excited to see how he does in 2025. Yeah,
completely agree. And with all those guys on the team, I guess to kind of do a kind of more vague discussion before we head out. We've got all these guys, like I said, including the guys on the outside looking in, like Rasmussen, like Boyle, like Joe Rock, like Ian Seymour. Should the Rays consider making another move from the rotation to help bolster the offense? Because we traded Springs away, we got arms, we got Joe Boyle for that. There's still a lot of depth there. Should the Rays make another move? For example, I know over the past couple of days there's been a couple of rumors about James Outman, for example, in the outfield. Would you trade someone like a Taj Bradley for James Outman?
The only way that I'm moving off of an MLB ready starter at this point in the offseason, because we've already traded Springs. So if we're going to move another MLB ready arm, it's got to be like someone like Outman, who I believe can actually provide value at the major league level right now. And even that might be a little bit much. And I think it's a fair trade, by the way, if we were to trade Taj and a prospect for Outman. That's probably a fair deal. I don't know if the Dodgers would be interested in it because they kind of have a lot of pitching, so they may not need that. But I don't feel comfortable trading. As soon as we traded Springs, I'm not comfortable trading anybody else from the rotation right now. Because while we do have depth, it's a lot of AAA depth. Depth. And I think those guys could provide some good innings at the major league level. But I am not comfortable going into the season with relying on Joe Rock to be the number 5 starter. I'm just not comfortable with that. Could he do it? Probably. I'd much rather not do that. So in my opinion, I don't want to see any other guys move from the rotation unless it is for a difference maker from the offensive perspective.
Sure, I can totally see that. The only thing you can guarantee about pitchers is they'll get hurt, and you should always plan for at least 2 of your main 5 rotation to get injuries that will put them out for a few weeks. Like, you've always got to plan for at least 2 guys at any given time to be out. If not, I think you've failed to plan and plan to fail.
I agree.
And not every season is going to be the 2023 Rays where all of your guys go down with Tommy John. But yeah, I mean, we've still got 6 weeks or so until spring training kind of kicks off. It's been a relatively quiet off season for the Rays. We traded Springs, signed Jansen, and that's kind of been it. And traded Siri. Do you think there's anything else cooking for the Rays, or do you think we're just gonna run in with this squad?
I mean, I think there's a chance they make another move, kind of like the Jimenez signing, where it's something on the outskirts of the roster. I don't expect anything big unless they shock us all and sign Roki Sasaki. That's a game changer. But outside of that, I don't expect much.
Yeah, me neither. So buckle up, boys. It might be not very much news, but lots of player reviews coming up.
But we got player reviews. We're going to have player previews and position group previews going into 2025 coming up. We're going to have previews and predictions for the AL East, for the season as a whole. And we may even have a certain game show inspired episode coming up at some point in the offseason that you're going to want to be here for. And if you don't want to miss any of that, which you shouldn't, do us a huge favor and subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you use most frequently to watch us. That way you will know every single time that we're going live, we're posting an episode, so you don't miss any of this stuff, because you're not going to want to miss any of it. We're breaking down at the end of of last season and getting started going right into next season. Lots of exciting stuff to come, and you're going to want to be here for every minute of it.
Absolutely. It's going to be lots of fun stuff to listen up for, and I can't wait to keep on talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to be our show for this week. We appreciate all of you that have stuck with us and are riding with us throughout the offseason. We've got a little bit more to go, but before you know it, pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting in February, only about a month and a half away from that. So just stick with us throughout the rest of this offseason. We're going to keep talking ball with you guys, but for now, raise up.
Raise up.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.